Hello, and welcome to another Sports Next Door podcast. Today is Monday, March 15th. My name is Owen, and I'm joined, as I always am, by my neighbor Max. We are recording on Sunday night, Selection Sunday, because I full well knew that I was not going to be able to get up tomorrow morning for our regularly scheduled time due to daylight savings. So we are doing Sunday night. Max, how are you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm all right. I've got a lot of woes to nurse. It was not a kind night to Canadians in the UFC card last night. It was not a kind night to Genie Bouchard. I'm just going through the full docket. It's not been a kind night to our Toronto Maple Leafs, and it's not been a kind night or a kind week to our Toronto Raptors. And we're hoping that one's going to turn around soonish, but a lot of Canadian, Toronto specifically, sporting woes to deal with, and all I've got to cope with that is half a bottle of wine and a beer. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there as well. Just so everyone knows, we're recording kind of third period. A Leafs game, Raps game is about to get underway here on the East Coast, and a pretty boring day for me, all in all. I played a lot of 2K. I've been really getting back into that, of course, with the PlayStation 5 in the household, and I feel like I'm getting a little bit better at the game. I'm starting to figure out what some of the I don't know what you want to call it, the players who know how to cheese the system. I'm starting to figure out how to beat that sort of thing. And of
What are you
course,
playing?
a lot of 2K.
No, I meant what game mode?
A little bit of my career mixed with some my team. I've been playing some triple threat online, and then I've done some online play now. I'm 7-1 online with just the regular play now. But I think 6 out of those 7 were quits during the game.
Like you just cheese them, piss them off so hard they quit.
Yeah.
Hey, that's best. Like you, especially with the my team, there's I hate playing online. My connection is just garbage.
Yeah.
It's not even the shot timing. It's like I think I'm clear
Defense.
for a layup. I think I'm clear to pull up, and I try it, and there's a block on me.
Yeah.
Like before I've finished taking the shot, and
immensely frustrating.
But there's so many rewards on my team for doing online stuff that I just suffer through it.
Yeah.
But the rare game when just the opponent is so bad that I can just make the extra pass and find the open shot, and 10 minutes of that usually forces a quit, is always blessed.
Yeah.
Your boy McKayev heard me complaining about the Maple Leaf struggles, and it may be 4-2, though we're in the midst of a coach's challenge.
Of course. Naturally.
It's just nothing goes well for us.
Yeah.
We'll keep people updated on that.
Yeah. It's a pretty loose live show that everyone will obviously be hearing tomorrow. So not the same kind of vibe, but I will jump into a bit of an agenda for what's on the docket for tonight. We are going to briefly talk about the Selection Sunday and the NCAA March Madness bracket. It begins this week. Very, very exciting. One of the best times in sports when you've got a couple of the major North American leagues in full swing and you've got college basketball at the peak of its powers. So good couple weeks ahead in the sports world. We've got hockey, combat corner, basketball, football, and then a couple of notes to wrap up on in tennis and baseball, but those will be very short. And without further ado, Max, there are a couple blue bloods who are not even in this tournament. Duke and Kentucky will not be in the March Madness bracket for the first time since 1976. And it is wacky to see how this has been constructed. It's less so about how the teams have performed throughout the season. And I'm going to pause briefly, as you could probably hear the ambulance run by my house. And
I thought that was the McKayev goal being waved off, but
and more so about who has been able to survive COVID scares. Because we know a couple of teams like Virginia, Kansas had COVID worries earlier in the week prior, but they are in the tournament. and obviously they'll have enough players available. And I think as it's been with 2020 now into 2021, there's going to be plenty of craziness, as there always is in March Madness. And there's going to be plenty of unexpected things that happen, because that is just what has been our lives for the last year. But I do think in the end, just like these other sports where we've seen, I think the top competitor or one of the cream of the crop is going to rise to the top once again, as we've seen in other sports with the Lakers, the Dodgers, the Lightning, all winning. And I guess the Buccaneers is a little different, but they in the playoffs really turned it on and were the best team at that point in the season.
It's
So
hard to make that call over 16 games
yeah,
as opposed to the other leagues.
absolutely. And so similar to football, it's one game elimination in this tournament, but I think we will see a top 4 seed from one of these 4 conferences be that team that takes it in the end. But it's going to be a fun couple of weeks to get there. And yeah, just looking forward to some March Madness, and a fun note to kick off the show that the bracket has officially been set. And I guess we'll probably do a couple brackets ourselves and break them down on Friday. Along with our midseason hockey report as well. I believe we'll set that up for Friday as well. So speaking of hockey, we've got our live Leaf Sens commentary. Max has got it sitting to his left, and
It's not
we're
going too well.
we're wallowing. Do we have an update on the results of the coaches challenge?
Oh, like I said, it got waived off. So
Oh,
it remains 4-1 Sens, and you've got to think if they were going to have a spark, that was it. I was in the middle of listening to you watching the goal. It looked like the call is probably goalie interference, and I don't know. It doesn't feel like a lot of whistles have been going our way, especially tonight. Ottawa's had 3 power plays. They capitalized on the last one, and that was what we might, in retrospect, call the beginning of the end of this game. And to me, we had that 4-game or almost 4-game losing streak, and I was able to remain optimistic in it because I felt like we were still getting more scoring chances, and it was just a couple of turnovers hurting us. Tonight, we've not had more scoring chances, and it's been a lot of turnovers. So it's more of the same, but at a much more problematic volume. And Michael Hutchinson did not help us out at the start. Maybe some good news on that front. We can report a trade for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They've traded defenseman Letnin from Russia, decided he wasn't working out. They were happy with what they've got, which I imagine they made that decision during the more successful times, and they make a trade for the Columbus goaltending prospect. Do you want to try and say it? Because it's Finnish.
I got it. Vevalainen.
That sounds
Yes.
pretty close to what I'm reading.
Yeah, Mikko Lehtinen going the other way, coming over, I believe from Finland. And he is a guy that is an NHL ready defenseman, but did not have a training camp to walk into, and was expected to knock out a guy like Dermott or Bogosian from the Leafs top 6, who have actually shown themselves to be fairly solid. And obviously, when you're expecting to come in and make a team's top 6 and you don't, then you're going to be unhappy. And I imagine the Leafs wanted to keep him because he's great depth defenseman to have in case of injuries, but he wanted to be moved. And so they fulfilled his request. And Columbus has a bit of I guess, like a large amount of goaltenders in their system. And so they were willing to part with one of those. Seems like a pretty simple 1-for-1 swap. Vevalainen, a couple years back, had some success in the Finnish league. He has played for Finland in world competitions and won the gold medal with them in 2019 in the IHF World Championships, and has also been on their junior team in the AHL, and has been a little bit down in his performance. But so I don't think we can expect too much from him. He's 6'1". He's a bit small for a goalie. A lot of people project his ceiling as a backup at his highest. So I don't know if that's going to solve our issues. I just hope we've got a couple days off now after a back-to-back, where you hope Freddie, Jack Campbell can get healthier. You hope Austin can get a little bit healthier in those off days, and this team can regroup and come back, because the gap has closed between them and the other top teams in the division, and they're going to need to get back up on their horse and start playing like they did a couple weeks ago in order to maintain that lead.
Yeah, what a difference a week and a half can make. I mean, felt like we were on the top of the world not too long ago, and that feeling has 100% dissipated.
I got to call out Chris Johnson here, who tried to work his voodoo magic by calling the Senators juggernauts before tonight's game. As if anyone's been following that Twitter saga, every time he's called a team a juggernaut, they've proceeded to go on a horrendous losing streak. But unfortunately, the voodoo did not work tonight. We need him to throw it on the Winnipeg Jets next. That would be where we need to send him off to, and hopefully and like I said earlier, a couple weeks ago, everyone has to take their turn kind of being sucky, and this is the Leafs' turn. It's just about what they make of it from this point on.
Yeah, this is true and real adversity. You can't have it both ways. You either have to have a team go through it and it sucks in the moment, or they don't go through it and you're worried about what's going to happen when they do. We're going through it now, and I can't wait for it to end, but you hope they're going to overcome this. You know they have the pieces and the ability to do that, and you hope that overcoming it makes them that much more confident come playoff time. I do like this trade. If they've decided Lettinen's not the guy, not a top 6 defenseman that they think makes the roster, and that makes sense when you look at Lettinen as a more offensive defenseman. He's not going to slot in too high. And you've got great defenseman prospects coming up. Hutchinson's looked rough around the edges in his past couple of starts, tonight especially. So a third goalie at best probably in Vehviläinen, and hope maybe he gets a couple starts late in the season and can pull off a W. But
I'm just getting a little distracted. It feels like you're at a rave, buddy, with the screen flashing, and
oh shit, yeah,
I can see the red and white bumping off your face. Looks like you're having a time up there in the suite.
Okay. Well, I'm glad it's not like the snot coming down reflecting it. I was hoping it wouldn't be a rough night for allergies, but I think I don't know. I hope I'm not allergic to you, buddy, because I feel like there's been quite a few. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that.
Well, we've spent enough time together. I would imagine you've built up a tolerance over the years, but yeah, you've got the Leafs game going. I imagine that's what's causing the light show.
Oh, I've got the Leafs game going and the Raps game on.
Beautiful. I might get that popping too. But first, we got to talk about the Edmonton Oilers, who get a win over the aforementioned Senators, who are beating us to a pulp right now. They reunite McDavid and Draisaitl on the top line, and they go banana land. And McDavid is the first player to hit 50 points on the NHL season, to no one's surprise. And the Oilers now 4 points back of the Leafs. Obviously, the Leafs have games in hand, but the gap is closing. There are a couple teams all around. I think the second to the 6th place team in the division are separated by 8 points. So even Vancouver's starting to turn things around in their season. And there's a lot of teams in the North Division that are hungry, who have righted the ship and are coming for a playoff spot. And just another team to add to the list, Vancouver, Edmonton, of course, with these two guys reunited. They need their bottom 9 to figure it out. But that's a common thread with Edmonton over the years, and we'll see what happens there.
It must be great to live in Nunavut and just watch this Canadian division as a whole and have no attachment to any one particular team. That is where I would like to be right now.
Yeah, well, mostly just so we could get on a pond, right? Because I imagine they've got places to skate everywhere. It'd be gorgeous.
Man, I like having like a little radio going, beers in the snow, pond hockey.
Beauty. That is all we have to talk about the North Division, and not much to say. We are struggling through this evening recording, but keeping the updates flowing. We'll have a halfway report on the league as a whole on Friday. probably mostly North centric because that is where we are. But there are some interesting storylines developing south of the border, and we will bring those to you. But until then, we'll take a quick break and be back for some Combat Corner. And we're back for some Combat Corner. I saw one knockout, and I don't know if that's on your card here, but besides that, Max, you gotta let me know what's going on. What happened this weekend?
There were quite a few knockouts, and most people probably feel more positively about the card Saturday night, UFC Vegas 21, than I do. Just a rough weekend for Canadian sports all around. 2 out of the 3 Canadians getting knocked out on this card. One in about 20 seconds and the other in about a minute and 10 seconds. But I'm going to kick off this segment with the only bright spot, as far as I'm concerned, in Canadian sports of the weekend. And that's possibly, hopefully, the knockout you saw, Charles Jourdain, with a crazy fight of the night performance that ends with a 3rd round knockout after just a cumulative firefight on both sides. I don't think this guy knows any way to win other than by stoppage, and he showed that mentality Saturday night in his performance against, I believe he's Argentinian, Rojo. In, like I said, just a firefight. Both guys came out to swing, wanted to back up as little as possible, as rarely as possible, and it was just a question of who could be crisper on their shots and whose chin was going to hold up more for the most part, and that ended up being Jourdain. It was a really close first round. I felt like he pulled away a bit in the second. Started when both guys go toe to toe like that and just keep swinging. Body shots can be huge, and I felt like Jourdain utilized them a little better, just ending his combos with a couple of ripping hooks to the body. And then in the 3rd round, he finally found the shot that knocked Rojo down and just stayed on it. Like I said, this guy doesn't know any way to win other than by stoppage. I mean, he was fighting the whole fight like he smelled blood in the water. And when he got an opening, he just pressed it, had some great ground and pound on the first knockdown, brought it back to the feet, and just stayed on it until he found the finish. Really happy to have one bright spot to talk about this weekend. And that was Charles Jourdain. I think he did get his 50K fight of the night bonus. It'll be that was Rojo's UFC debut. I thought he as well looked really good. So it'll be interesting to see where Rojo goes from here to get a bit better of an indicator of where Jourdain is at, because his UFC start has not been as great as hoped. But Saturday night he looked great, and that was a really fun fight to watch. All right, the next fight I wanted to talk about was one that was scheduled a couple weeks back, Angela Hill versus Ashley Yoder. And I said Angela Hill needed to be dominant, she needed to be impressive, and she needed to make a statement about where she belongs in the women's strawweight division. And I think she did exactly that. She just showed a levels to this game performance against Ashley Yoder, absolutely lighting her up on the feet. It felt like her right hand couldn't miss. She was landing it straight. She was landing it loopy. She was generating a ton of power on her lead leg kick. And when all that failed to produce tangible results in how hurt Yoder looked, she went to the body beautifully, hurting her with a straight. And then I guess the only thing you can really criticize about her performance is she might have been a bit overzealous on her follow-up knees to the body, trying to chase that finish, which, if anything, you've got to respect the desire to find that finish, even if it ended up with her getting put on her butt a couple of times. But the statement performance she needed at this juncture in her career, where a loss would have really set her back and a mediocre win would have not gotten her to where she wants to be. But I think a win like this, following those really close split decision fights, makes it. I'm so curious about the face you just made.
Willie puts the Leafs within 1.
Oh,
So hang in there, right? We
well,
interrupt this regularly scheduled combat corner for a happy Leafs moment. And I don't know how much time is there left. 9 minutes?
way less.
Oh,
2.
oh dear. Okay. Well, I don't know if you want to get back to combat corner, but maybe we got to tune in.
Yeah, I might have to watch the last 2 minutes of this hockey game.
Okay. I think we should break and then come back and you can finish up the combat corner and we'll talk a little Leafs.
I And we're back after some regularly just scheduled Toronto Maple Leafs disappointment to resume Combat Corner, and leaving off where I was with Angela Hill. Fantastic performance, exactly what she needed. I think the matchmakers have got to throw her right back in there in that top 15. She's showed where she's at, being very, very, very competitive with Claudia Gadelia and Michelle Watterson, and then totally dominating a girl who's out of the rankings in Ashley Yoder. That's exactly what a top 15 fighter should look like, and that is Angela Hill. So congratulations to her, a much needed and well-deserved win. Then we get to the main card, which had 2 stoppages by no contest due to an illegal foul. The opener and the main event. We'll get to the main event later, but starting off with the opener, Eric "ya boy" Anders knees Darren Stewart while he's grounded to the head, and the fight ends by doctor decision. This one was interesting because the knee came at the end of an absolute barrage by Anders, where he hurt Stewart multiple times and was just continually chasing the finish, trying to find that one shot that would at least set him up in TKO position. And he was doing that for about 30 seconds before it got to a scenario where Stewart was grounded. He has his knee and his foot on the mat, which along with his hand and other leg counts as more than 2 points of contact. Anders's knee goes up right away. He doesn't really have the time to check whether Stewart is grounded, and he's just chasing that finish. And contrary or different to the Jan Sterling fight, no DQ. This one is counted as a no contest. Now, the other thing that was interesting about this was I don't know how hurt Stewart actually was from the knee. He did get his hands up to block it, and it wasn't the same kind of leverage or momentum as the Sterling Jan knee, and he was already really hurt before this sequence. So the doctor has him walk forward, doesn't like what he sees, and stops the fight. I think plenty of referees, at least plenty of fighters, would have said no, he's good to go. The doctor probably saving him from Stewart from himself, and also just doesn't want that on his conscience and sending out a man to get further damaged. So I don't hate the decision. It's just almost refreshing or different to get pure medical common sense as opposed to a just bleed, nah, you're fine, you can go get it at 40% mentality. But interesting to have another illegal knee. I don't know how much of a disincentive there is to stop these strikes if Anders isn't punished for it. It is a heat of the moment blow, but we'll talk about this more with the main event. If there's no punishment for it, then there's no incentive really to not do it, and it incentivizes being more vicious. So the next fight is the one I have to really eat my words on this card, Gavin Tucker versus Dan Ige. I was high on Gavin Tucker. I thought he had all the tools to win this fight, and instead he got KO'd in about 20 seconds, which the worst part is I talked about Ige's hooks and Ige KOs Tucker with a straight, and that's not really the worst part, but just walk all over me a little more. Why don't you, Danny Ige? I did call the explosiveness, which I think is what you attribute, or I attribute this finish to. Tucker just underestimating how quick and how fast and how powerful Danny Ige is. Didn't really respect the distance in the striking and looked to just get right to work and started throwing, and Ige was the quicker fighter. Tucker starts setting up one shot, Ige explodes in, lands that straight, and almost a flash KO. So exactly what Dan Ige needed and exactly what Gavin Tucker did not. At 35, I don't really see a path to UFC title contention coming off a loss, which is tough. I'm kind of busted up about this one. He was a fighter I really enjoyed watching and really had my eye on. So great win for Dan Ige. It shows how dangerous this guy is and how the kind of slow, meticulous, take your time over 5 rounds performance that Calvin Kattar took to approach a fight with him was the correct one. You've got to respect the range. You've got to let him make the move and counter off that, because if you don't, he's just too athletic and has power in his hands. So tough one for the governor, but he is only 14 fights into his career, so not a ton of wear and tear. If he wants to keep fighting, I think he can keep fighting, and I hope to see him get back, redeem this loss, and show something special, because I think he's a great fighter. But Saturday night belonged to Dan Ige and the aptly named 50K in this case. The Canadian woes continue in the co-main event between Misha Cirkunov and Ryan Spann. Cirkunov kind of surprised me and scared me with his aggressiveness in this one. He came out looking to just throw, and I think trying to just pressure Spann and neutralize the threat with his own offense, which sounds great in theory, but leaves you open to the counter strikes, and that's exactly what happened. And a minute in, I think even less, in like the Southpaw Orthodox matchup, all it takes is one clean right hand, and that's what Spann had. The younger, more athletic fighter just timing the older, chinnier fighter, and Southpaw Orthodox matchup makes it that much easier. Clean, straight counter strike from Spann, and then it was just a matter of being diligent and being vicious on the follow-up, and took it to the ground once, couldn't quite find him, lets him back up, keeps pursuing it, and makes it happen, and no messing about the second time on the ground, just keep steady and fair enough stoppage. Spann is a really dangerous fighter on the ground as well. Most of his finishes have come by submission, so I see the idea in Cirkunov looking for that finish or the pressure in the stand-up, but when you're the older, less athletic fighter, I think you have to be especially at light heavyweight, be a little more aware of the risk of getting that close and fighting with that much pressure, because as soon as he stepped in there with that pressure and just kept throwing so aggressively, it felt so risky, and it wasn't really a surprise to see that first right hand land, and from there it was just a matter of time. So I was not in a great place when the main event started on this card, and I started to get a little more optimistic as the main event went on, because Leon Edwards looked as good as he always looks, but even more aggressive, so even better. Landed a beautiful head kick that wobbled Muhammad, had some nice 1-2s as he always does, looked to be in his rhythm in the pressure. The only thing he didn't like was in that first round, he landed an eye poke, and it spoke to that aggressiveness that Edwards was displaying. He was part of his game plan tactics was walking forward with a probing right hand and southpaw, and he kept that open. He kept it horizontal, and keeping it so close let him switch it into a fist very quickly to try and time the jab and just constantly press forward. But you land one eye poke, the ref tells you not to stick your hands out, and you've got to listen, and he didn't. He kept doing the same thing. His hand kind of constantly in this range, and it is a freak accident. Muhammad comes forward, Edwards has his hand out, and finger and eye. It was brutal to watch. Muhammad was in agony. There was really no question about whether this fight was going to continue. You could tell the stoppage was coming near instantly. And you feel like Edwards is almost cursed in some way, because I told you how unlucky of a run he's had in this past year, and that just continues with this fight. The commentary was nonstop on how a win pretty much cemented him a title shot, and it seemed like it was going to be near effortless for him to get that, and this was really the only thing that could get in the way of it. It's just, I think more of a fan of Edwards than your average UFC consumer, so I have that and feel like he looked great, but I'm conflicted between how much to blame Edwards and how much to blame the gloves. I think the Edwards tactic is fair, and so the worst eye poker for me is John Jones. If you watch like his fight against Shogun Rua, where he won the belt, he had his hands straight out like this, pushing the palm or the forehead of Rua, and the eye poke threat just kept Rua on the back foot. That's not what Edwards was doing. He wanted it to be a jab, but you don't keep a fist closed the whole time because it's harder to parry strikes. You keep the open hand to be able to parry with that lead hand. And he had his hand not like this for the eye poke, but like this. But you land one eye poke, the referee tells you keep your hands up. That's what the rules say you have to do, and he doesn't. And because he doesn't, in part, this eye poke happens. If you had gloves that allowed the hand to curve more naturally instead of forcing the fingers to be constantly straight, I don't think this happens. The eye poke, when you look at like a photo, it didn't go too deep into the eye like some. It was very shallow just at the bottom. So accidental, but avoidable if Edwards had changed his fight tactics after the first. The fight is called a no contest, so why would he doesn't suffer from it as nearly as much as he potentially could have. If the eye poke had been like a millimeter, a centimeter in a different situation, Edward or Muhammad would have probably been happy to continue if the damage had been a bit less bad, and maybe that would have contributed to an Edwards stoppage. So the UFC has to do something. They've got to punish the eye pokers more. They've got to change their gloves. But this is such a problem, and it was just such a tough card for me overall, watching two Canadians get stopped back to back and having the main event end like this. I'm frustrated, and I don't know. You could run this fight back. I mean, I don't think it's going to be lasting damage from Muhammad, but Edwards is already looking forward. Maybe he thought Muhammad would be out for longer. There's like a stretch of no fights, so it's not going to happen, but I'd love to see the UFC just say fuck it between the UFC pay-per-view between Stipe and Ngannou and the April 10th card between Vettori Till. Let's just make this fight happen. 5 rounds, put it on Fight Pass. Don't bother like trying to set up a whole 10-15 fight card. Just maybe a couple openers if you can. I'm sure someone's game. I just want to see Edwards fight again. He looked great, and he just has to tame the aggressiveness a little with that lead hand. But overall, a really frustrating UFC card for me. That's going to wrap up this Combat Corner. I can't wait to get to whatever's making you make all these faces, which we will get right to after a short break. And we're back. This Saturday night, sports games are on, so we can't help but have them on as we watch, which hopefully is not too much to the detriment of this show and gives it a little something different, a little pop. I know the Raps just hurting your soul a little through that Combat Corner segment. Tell me why.
All right, Henry Ellenson just hit a 3, so we're back. I love the Raptors again. That's the thing about basketball, so up and down. Just without Pascal, without OG, without Fred, this team is just pure, like, they struggle so much to score a single point on the offensive end because it's Lowry throwing these amazing pocket passes and Aaron Baines just throwing brick hooks on the roll and Watanabe getting swatted and Boucher trying to shoot threes because now he's getting extra shot attempts. And it's just, without Powell and Lowry on the floor, this team would be a G League team. That's what it feels like. And you've got Paul Watson in the starting lineup, or at least getting major minutes, who is usually the 15th guy in your rotation. No hate towards Paul Watson, but he's not a guy who should be playing in these type of games. He's a guy who's playing garbage time in the fourth quarter, and you're still looking to develop him because he's only in his second year in the league. So brutal to watch in that front. It harkens back to some of the Raptors teams of old where you've got like Calderon and Bargnani, not much shot creation. You got Bosch on the floor, of course. He'll put up some buckets. There's that little dead era before DeRozan and Lowry took over, but yeah, it's been tough. The offense is not there, and if they're not bringing 100% on defense, then you're gonna get games like they had against Charlotte last night, where they just gave up a ton of threes. LaMelo was doing his pump fake 360 no scope 3. And you get lit up. And so there's really not much to say. We just need to get our guys back. And hopefully, I mean, they've missed so much time now. You got to imagine one of them contracted, if not more, contracted the virus. And you have worries about how they're going to come back and play after, because Tatum has mentioned about the after effects, how it's been affecting him. And I got to take a bigger perspective and say, if they make the playoffs, that's great. But after all that's happened, there are no expectations on this team anymore. Living in Tampa, going through this now 3-week stretch of COVID scare, having to do the things they've had to do and still fighting every night. Best case scenario, they make the playoffs. Worst case, we've got a top 10 pick pretty much. And you can't complain about that when this draft is projected to be well. So that's all I'm going to say on the Raptors, because it's been really tough to watch them these last couple of games. I want to move into some other NBA storylines I picked out. And then we have an NBA Top Shot pack opening, which will be really, really exciting. Unless I get 3 Cody Zellers. And then in that case, we might just shut down the pod for good. But I will start by talking about the prognosis that came back on Joel Embiid's MRI. He went down hard in a game with a left knee injury of some kind. Turns out it is only a bone bruise. There is no structural damage. Thank goodness for that. He is having an MVP. He's the front runner for the MVP this season. He's going to miss 2 to 3 weeks, which may hurt his chances there. But you want this guy to be healthy because he has seemed so incredibly locked in, and he's doing some great things on both sides of the floor that you just want to watch the best players play. And it might suck. It obviously opens the door back up for LeBron to jump into that MVP conversation again, because I imagine you're going to be with Philadelphia in the number 1 seed, and with you wanting to be more careful with a player of this magnitude in his recovery, just how the Lakers are doing with Anthony Davis. I think it'll be longer than 2 weeks until Joel is back, and that will hurt his MVP chances. If you're a Sixers fan, that's fine. You want to win a championship. Today, we had Steph Curry and our Canadian boy, Andrew Wiggins, going off for combined 60 points. Curry with 32, Wiggins with an incredibly efficient 28. And he played well on both sides of the ball, really having some great defensive possessions against Donovan Mitchell. And Draymond Green has his patented low-scoring triple-double, 11, 12, and 12. He just does everything for that team. And these are the games that the Warriors really need to win against the top contenders in the West to prove that that they can punch above their weight limit. Nice little combat corner reference for you there, Max, and that they belong in this playoff picture. So well done by the Warriors today. The Atlanta Hawks, as I check the score right now, are well on their way to becoming, and just final now against the Cavs. They are now 5-0 since they have switched head coaches. Good mojo for them. Obviously, they get pretty much a freebie win against these Raptors. But hey, the culture has shifted in that locker room, and guys want to play for Nate McMillan, and they've been playing really well, and they're climbing the standings. So good for Atlanta. Trae Young is still not an elite player. All right. That is kind of all. Yeah.
What level of offense does it take to get that status?
Well, everyone can put up numbers nowadays on the offensive end. We have more players averaging 20 points per game than ever in the history of the league.
So I'm asking, does it take 30-point average? Does it take 40-point average?
Well, that's what he does, right?
No, I'm just asking, is there a number where it's like, okay, defense doesn't matter, you're an elite player, or does there just have to be defense for you to give out that status?
I would say it depends on his usage rate, right? He touches the ball all the time, so he should put up those numbers. So what I would say is, at his usage rate, he should be like a 40 and 10 guy, right? And of course, the defense instantly will prevent him from ever being one of the top 10 players in the league. And that's fine. He can be an all-star every year. He may even make an all-NBA team, but I don't know. He unless he competes more defensively and unless he can play a little bit more off the ball, because right now he touches it every single possession. I just don't see him in the same regard as some of these other great young point guards, like a LaMelo Ball, like a Ja Morant, like a Luka Doncic, I guess you could say. You could go on. Great player, very special. I love the shooting, but I need to see more from Trae. And right now Atlanta is having success, so I guess I'm eating my words a little bit.
Well, yeah, I'll add 2 comments to that. First, Trae's stock's risen a little in my books just because I've heard a couple interviews of him like constantly complimenting Steve Nash and saying he wants to model his game after that, which just, I feel like anyone who says that gets some respect from me. And also, as someone who realized they were never going to be taller than 6'2", love to see someone of that stature making it in the NBA. But secondly, yes, come playoff time, you've got to feel like any game down the stretch, the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, that hole is just going to get blown up relentlessly, and it's going to be hard to imagine the Hawks being able to plug it.
All right. Well, you make some valid points. I have nothing left to say on the matter. I'm just excited to open up some cards because we got our packs delivered a couple days ago. So we'll take a quick break on our end. For you, it will be happening right after this.
Right after this.
All right. So something a little bit different here. I've been talking about Top Shot now for a couple months, and I'm excited to bring you some content. We're going to be doing a pack opening. This is a pre-order pack that pretty much every user, I think there were 180,000-ish that everyone got. This is Series 2, Release 21, and going to be opening it up live. For those of you listening to the podcast, I will do my best to illustrate what is going on. But if you want to come take a look, you can visit our YouTube page, Sports Next Door. So here we go. Time to open it up. Should we get the music bumping? I don't know if you're able to hear that, but here we go. This is exciting. The pack is being opened, and hopefully
$100,000 could be made right now.
and hopefully my Wi-Fi holds up. because right now it is moving very slowly.
Just
All right, the music's bumping.
Clickbait headlines I could have.
We got 3 cards in this pack. I will turn off the music. I just want to make sure all of our podcast listeners are ready. Here comes card number 1, getting opened up. It is a block by Giannis Antetokounmpo. Whoo, baby, that's a good one. And it is a very low serial number 1417 out of 35,000. Giannis going up with the right hand to reject John Collins at the rim. Very nice. That one will go for a pretty penny. We have card number 2, Sacramento Kings block by Hassan Whiteside. Another low serial number 2,584 out of 35,000. Wiggins spins in the lane, rejected by Hassan. That one, these common cards are not money makers by any means, but a pretty cool highlight to add to the collection. And our third and final card opening up right now, we've got a layup by a Houston Rockets, Victor Oladipo, who may not be on the Rockets much longer in this season, depending on what happens as we approach the trade deadline. He drives into the lane, a nice reverse scoop layup there. And it is also a fairly decent serial number at 9609 out of 35,000 plus. So all in all, for this common pack, $9 in, going to definitely be more than $9 out. But cool to have a couple more moments to add to the collection. I've been very fortunate in my collecting duties so far on NBA Top Shot, and hopefully this is exciting for everyone, for the podcast listeners. I did my best to describe what we got going on, but if you want to see the moment for yourself, head over to our YouTube page. I'm really pumped with these, especially the Giannis. That's a sick block.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
keep up to date on what those sell for.
Yeah, and Max, this was, I guess, your first experience with Top Shot. There's just such a rush, right? You've done 2K, whatever, Chell, whatever it is. You've opened packs before, and it's such an enjoyable experience. But now there's actually some tangible monetary gain associated with it.
Yeah, it's a rush. It makes me hesitant to walk into a casino with more than $20 in my pocket, because I was, as we were clicking open, like picturing LeBron James dunk and you being thousands of dollars richer and me getting thousands to tens of thousands of clicks on that YouTube channel. And I don't think that's going to happen. I have no idea what this Giannis thing is worth. That's a big name, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, very cool, very scarily, promisingly addicting and seductive in that manner as well. But I'm mostly just hyped that you told me about this come January, and now I'm seeing and hearing about it from so many different avenues. So again, congrats to you for getting on that boat early.
Thanks, buddy. Giannis, Whiteside, and Oladipo. Not too shabby. We will take a quick break and come back to wrap up the pod with some football, tennis, and baseball.
And we're back to wrap things up with all of the sports that I cannot keep track of. So Owen, please update me and our listeners.
Gladly. And I want to start with the football fan cave. We're going across the pond once again. Champions League coming up this week. Real Madrid, tough match against Atalanta, but they do get the result they wanted. And they're up 1-0 on aggregate as they go into their second leg. Mönchengladbach has been struggling mightily in all competition, and they're in tough, down 2-0 to Manchester City. We've got Bayern and Lazio, and then Chelsea Atletico Madrid is probably the most interesting of the matchups in this slate for this week. But leg 2 football in the Champions League is some of the best sporting excitement that you can get, especially when it gets down to the end and teams are pushing one way or the other, as we saw with Juventus and Porto in the last week. So looking forward to keeping track of the results as they come through on Tuesday and Wednesday this week. But we will move to the gridiron back here in our continent and talk about some NFL news. Firstly, today, Drew Brees posting a video on Twitter, his kids announcing his retirement from the NFL after 20 seasons, 15 years to the day since he signed with the New Orleans Saints. As we know, he started his career in San Diego. And Drew Brees, I mean, him and Tom Brady back and forth with all the different records that they hold. And a guy that was incredibly reliable, always a high completion percentage, great game manager, and one Super Bowl probably was not enough for him, but he does have one in the back pocket, and then a really important one for the city of New Orleans after Katrina. So he will always be beloved there, and he has provided many entertaining years of football and put up a ton of numbers. First ballot Hall of Famer for sure. Congrats to Drew Brees, and I look forward to seeing him hopefully in a booth broadcasting, maybe similar to a Tony Romo story, because I think he's probably got something lined up.
You've got to think quarterbacks probably like the number one, maybe them and linebackers, like just game IQ to fill those roles.
Definitely, and I'd probably throw safeties in there as well. But yeah, and especially with him doing it as long as he has at the level that he has. I think there was rumors, I can't remember. He was in talks with a couple of networks. So I think it's even more that he's interested as well in seeing the broadcast. And of course, Tony Romo got paid a huge amount of money to do his. So I think a lot of current players saw that and their ears perked up a little bit about, and we talked about the media rights, about the future of football broadcasting is not going to be constrained to 3 networks. There's going to be a lot more parties interested. And so I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities for new booths and new characters to be commentating these games. So looking forward to see what Drew Brees does next. And if it's relevant, it'll be in broadcasting. And I'm sure he'll provide some great analysis moving forward. I want to jump into some signings. The Green Bay Packers seemingly get a pretty big steal, re-signing Aaron Jones, their top running back, to a 4-year, $48 million deal that puts him at $12 million per year, which seems rather low for a guy of his talent. His numbers were restricted by the fact that they did balance a lot of his carries and opportunities with Jamal Williams, and AJ Dillon emerged a little bit later in the season for the Packers, but super talented. He scores a ton of touchdowns, and a guy who has gotten better every season, and the Packers get him on a good deal. He really wanted to stay in Green Bay is what his agent said. And so I'm sure he took a little bit of a discount because he would have got paid in free agency. So a good deal for the Packers, and just another weapon that Aaron Rodgers can keep this time as they launch another campaign trying to get back to the NFC Championship game and then hopefully to the Super Bowl.
You seem optimistic Rodgers stays.
I don't see why not.
Well, it's just not what you were saying after the Green Bay season ended.
Yeah, and that was the story at the time, but we haven't heard much since. He is engaged and ready to get married, and I don't know if that means he wants too much change in his life, and probably better to have things locked down. He is royalty in Green Bay. They will love him forever, and it seems like that's where he's going to stay with all the other quarterback options in the market moving around, swinging around. Of course, Deshaun Watson looms over everything. And of course, the draft coming up. So we'll see what happens there. It seems like for now, Aaron Rodgers will be a Packer by the time next season gets going.
Go Cheeseheads.
All right. And then the last deal that kind of went under the radar for some reason, but I'm sure picked up a ton of interest south of the border in the States as they love the NFL, and Taysom Hill getting a 4-year, $140 million contract. Max, do you know who Taysom Hill is?
No, that is $100 million more than you just mentioned, though.
Yeah, exactly. So very surprising contract. There's a lot of minutia that goes into this, and I'm not a contract expert, but all years of the deal are voidable. And I think a lot of it is non-guaranteed money. The NFL just does their contracts very differently than other leagues, where like the number that is put up there is rarely ever the number that actually gets paid out to the athlete.
Like more or less, or usually
A lot less. a lot less. And Taysom Hill was the backup quarterback in New Orleans. He is a guy who has shown to be a an incredibly talented guy, because he has played quarterback, he's played running back, he's played wide receiver, he has played special teams for them, he's blocked a couple punts. Like, he's just a pure athlete, and Sean Payton loves running offenses with him. I don't know if he is a long-term quarterback. They're obviously going to give him a go based on this contract. I'm sure it's laden with quarterback-based incentives. They also do have Jameis Winston that they can re-sign, who is a guy who has proven that he can at least compete at the NFL level. He throws a lot of picks, but maybe in Sean Payton's offense, he can be more successful. But Twitter exploded a little bit with this contract, because a lot of people are not in with this new era of NFL quarterbacks who love to be mobile and move around. And Taysom Hill is just, it feels a little bit gimmicky. He has had some success, but it will be very interesting to see if he is worth this immense contract. The other kind of storyline playing into this is the Saints are always in cap hell. And this contract, based on the way it's structured, will actually free up some cap space for them based on what he was supposed to make going into the season. So I guess that is also something that should be considered when taking stock of this contract. But it is a gargantuan contract, and is paying a guy who has never really been a full-time NFL quarterback money, elite quarterback money. So again, something interesting to follow. We're still a ways away from NFL season, but the storylines will continue to grow as we get closer to the draft and closer to free agency. So that wraps up my football fan cave. A couple more notes just to wrap up with. Alex Manoah in spring training today threw 3 no-hit innings against the backup Yankees. So not necessarily the minor leaguers, MLB caliber hitters, but he blazed through them, 7 strikeouts. This Manoah kid, same with Simeon Woods Richardson, who I mentioned a couple podcasts ago, are the future of the Blue Jays pitching rotation. So cool to see him showing some of his stuff. He's an absolute unit. He is a large dude, and he can throw heat. So a fun guy to watch when he's pitching.
When does the season start?
I believe, and that was actually something else I want to talk about. I think it's coming up April 1st, I believe, is the season starts, and they are opening up in Texas, where the Texas Rangers will have full capacity in their stadium to begin the season. So a full, 50,000 fans in the stadium, yelling, screaming, not all of them vaccinated. And it will be the first kind of super spreader test event of how you're managing people with half vaccinated, some people not, how you can have everyone wearing a mask but not be able to moderate it at all.
There's no mask mandate in Texas anymore, and that's, I imagine, the only reason this is happening. So I would be very surprised if even half the stadium's wearing masks.
Yeah, I'm worried, and I just hope for the Blue Jays' sake that they don't get anywhere near 6 feet of the stands. No going for foul balls if they're headed towards the stands. Don't get anywhere near them.
You put your glove over your face and use your bare hand to catch it like a cricket player.
Yeah, I can't even
a little
imagine.
more suspense to the game too.
You may have to tune in, my friend. It is going to be a bizarre first sporting event to see back with full fans, because obviously we've seen some videos of like New Zealand rugby, things like that. But this is the first North American event which will have fans, and you got to imagine it's going to be crazy because everyone's been dying to get back and watching sports. So probably some much watch TV, at least for the first 5 minutes, and then you can turn it off because it's not going to be fun after that.
Yeah.
At least for the baseball haters, I'm going to love it. All right.
Should be happy, because I certainly am not happy after Genie Bouchard giving a little bit of hope and then dashing that hope yet again.
She has only ever won one ATP tournament back in 2014. And of course, she made the finals of Wimbledon that one year when Genie's army was in full effect and everyone was very hyped for her success. I think that was a flash in the pan. She never showed she was a top tennis player. Of course, there was a lot of potential. But she's kind of settled into where she'll probably end up for the rest of her career. And that is an incredibly successful tennis player who will get a couple shots here and there, but does not belong with some of the elite women's players, and that's okay. She made it to the finals of the Abierto de Guadalajara Open and fell to a slightly higher ranked opponent. And that seems to be what it's going to look like for Genie for the next couple of years. And that is not me hoping. I'm hoping that she rekindles that success and goes on a run. It's always great for tennis and for all the young women out there in Canada who are getting into tennis and need an idol to look up to, especially with Bianca's injuries right now. So best of luck to Genie. And that's a tough one to swallow, but go get him next time, champ.
We're rooting for you, and I'm ready to gamble a date on Twitter anytime.
Oh, absolutely. That was an incredible story when she went to the Brooklyn Nets game with that guy.
There was like a Grey Cup, I think a Super Bowl, maybe 2 Grey Cups. I think it was quite the romance.
Yes. She likes her publicity stunts, if that is the appropriate term, but we still love her.
Yeah, I wish I wasn't 12 years old when Genie Army was a thing and had a shirt to flash, snap my fingers, and boom, it's on, but I don't. So
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going with this, but
Me
I
neither.
think it's the end of the podcast is where I'm going with it.
Yeah. Max
So,
has had a beverage or two. I don't really have an excuse except that I can just say that I'm tired. And I got another busy week of school ahead of me. But until then, we'll see you all on Friday. Thank you once again so much for listening. Thanks for making this all the way through with us. I hope you enjoyed some sports commentary, the live updates, and some NBA Top Shop content. Wow, I stumbled through that one. And yeah, thanks so much for listening. Find us anywhere you listen to your podcast. Share with your friends. Write us a review on Apple Play Podcasts. Would mean a ton. And yeah, thanks, Max. I'll throw it over to you.
stay safe, be precise in your words. Sports Next Door signing off.